The search for love drives everything from dating apps to poetry, from casual hookups to lifelong commitments. We describe this pursuit in the language of romance, connection, soulmates, completion. Yet behind these poetic notions lies a psychological reality, far more complex and revealing. What if what we call love is actually something else entirely? What if our deepest desire isn't to be loved, but to be recognized? Sigmund Freud, in his exploration of human desire, uncovered a truth both unsettling and liberating. What we seek in romantic partnerships often isn't the other person at all, but a reflection of ourselves. This isn't narcissism in the colloquial sense of self-obsession. Rather, it's a fundamental psychological mechanism through which we attempt to confirm our own existence and value through the mirror of another's perception. This insight cuts against our romantic ideals. We prefer to believe we fall in love with others for their unique qualities, their essential otherness. Freud suggested something more complex. We are drawn to those who reflect back to us a version of ourselves we wish to see. This doesn't mean we don't care about our partners, but that our attraction operates through psychological mechanisms more nuanced than we typically acknowledge. What Freud began to articulate, Jacques Lacan later developed into what we might call a mirror theory of desire. As infants, we first recognize ourselves through the reflecting gaze of our caregivers. This primal experience, seeing ourselves as we are seen, becomes the template for all subsequent desires for recognition. We spend our lives seeking eyes that will reflect back to us our value, our beauty, our significance. This theory makes sense of many otherwise perplexing relationship patterns. Consider the common experience of feeling intensely drawn to someone who seems barely aware of your existence. The conventional explanation frames this as wanting what we can't have. The mirror theory suggests something deeper. We crave the validation that would come from winning recognition from someone whose attention seems valuable, precisely because it's withheld. Conversely, we often lose interest in partners who adore us too readily. Their gaze, freely given, loses its power to validate. We doubt the value of recognition that comes without struggle, that doesn't seem to discern our unique qualities, but would be given to anyone. This explains why unconditional love, though nurturing, rarely satisfies adult desire, which seeks not acceptance, but specific recognition. This dynamic reveals itself most clearly in the disappointment that follows initial infatuation. During early attraction, we project idealized versions of ourselves onto the blank canvas of a new partner. They seem to see us exactly as we wish to be seen: confident, desirable, fascinating. As the relationship develops and their actual perceptions emerge, more accurate but less idealized, disappointment follows. What changed wasn't them, but the reflection they offered. Modern neuroscience confirms aspects of Freud's insight. Brain imaging reveals that early-stage romantic love activates regions associated with reward and goal-directed behavior rather than empathy or compassion. We pursue new partners not primarily to know them, but to attain the neurochemical rewards their attention provides. Only as relationships mature do the brain regions associated with empathy and deeper attachment activate. Social psychology adds another dimension through its research on reflected appraisal, our tendency to see ourselves as we believe others see us. Our sense of identity and worth depends significantly on the feedback we receive from those around us. Romantic partners, whose opinions typically matter most, have unprecedented power to shape our self-perception through their reflecting gaze. What makes this particularly complex is that we don't simply want positive reflection. We want authentic recognition. A partner who offers generic praise without seeming to truly see our specificity provides a distorted mirror that doesn't satisfy. We want to be seen accurately and valued specifically, not merely admired superficially. This explains why flattery, though temporarily pleasing, doesn't create lasting satisfaction. The paradox deepens when we recognize that complete authenticity would mean being seen with all our flaws and limitations, something few can tolerate without anxiety. We want recognition that feels authentic while still confirming our idealized self-image. This impossible demand creates the characteristic instability of desire, constantly shifting between partners or moments that temporarily seem to offer this perfect, validating reflection. Gender adds significant complexity to this dynamic. Women and men are socialized differently regarding the importance of recognition and how it should be sought. Women are often taught from childhood that their value lies significantly in being seen, specifically, being seen as beautiful, nurturing, and relationally skilled. This creates a particular vulnerability to seeking validation through the male gaze. Men, conversely, are frequently socialized to seek recognition for achievement, strength, and competence. Their desire for romantic recognition often focuses on being seen as providers, protectors, or sexually skilled. These gendered patterns create predictable misalignments in heterosexual relationships, where partners unconsciously seek different forms of validation from each other. Social media has dramatically amplified our collective obsession with recognition. Platforms that quantify attention through likes, comments, and follows make explicit what was always implicit in human interaction. The addictive quality of these metrics stems directly from their simulation of the validating gaze we've sought since infancy. Dating apps similarly reduce romantic potential to a binary of recognition or rejection. What's particularly striking is how the pursuit of recognition shapes our behavior in ways we rarely acknowledge. Consider how differently you present yourself around someone whose validation you crave versus someone whose opinion seems irrelevant. The clothes you choose, the stories you tell, the opinions you express, all subtly calibrated to elicit the specific recognition you seek. This calibration isn't necessarily conscious deception. Rather, different potential partners activate different aspects of our identity. Around someone who seems to value intellectual depth, our scholarly interests naturally come forward. With someone who responds to humor, our wit emerges. We become the version of ourselves that might win the specific recognition we desire from that particular person. The most painful romantic disappointments often occur when we realize a partner doesn't see us as we wish to be seen, or worse, doesn't see us at all. The common complaint, "You don't really know me," reveals this fundamental hunger for recognition. We can forgive many relationship flaws, but the failure to be accurately seen cuts to the core of our psychological needs. This explains the peculiar pain of being idealized by a partner. When someone loves not us, but their fantasy of us, we experience the opposite of true recognition. Their adoring gaze misses our actual self entirely, leaving us paradoxically more alone in our authentic identity than if they saw our flaws clearly. True recognition requires both loving attention and accurate perception. The search for recognition creates particularly complex dynamics around vulnerability. Revealing our authentic selves risks rejection, but creates the possibility of genuine recognition. The central gamble of intimacy is that by showing ourselves as we truly are, we might finally receive the validation we crave. Yet this same vulnerability creates the risk of devastating non-recognition. Relationship conflicts often center on this struggle for recognition. Arguments about seemingly mundane issues, household chores, social plans, parenting decisions, frequently mask deeper conflicts about whose perspective will be validated. The partner who feels chronically unrecognized eventually demands acknowledgement, sometimes through escalating methods that paradoxically make genuine recognition less likely. The hunger for recognition explains much about infidelity as well. Affairs often begin not primarily from sexual attraction, but from the intoxication of new recognition. The affair partner sees potential and possibility, where a long-term partner may see only familiar limitations. This new reflection feels revelatory, offering validation for aspects of identity that may have long gone unrecognized in the primary relationship. Age changes our relationship with recognition in significant ways. Young adults typically seek external validation intensely, measuring themselves through others' perceptions. As we mature, internal forms of self-recognition gradually become more important than external validation. This shift marks a key aspect of emotional development, moving from dependence on others' perception to greater self-definition. Parental relationships profoundly shape our adult patterns of seeking recognition. Children whose authentic qualities were accurately seen and valued develop secure expectations about being recognized by others. Those whose parents saw only certain aspects of them or projected qualities they didn't possess develop distorted patterns of seeking validation for specific traits while hiding others. The therapeutic process directly addresses these distortions. Effective therapy provides not just insight, but a corrective experience of recognition. The therapist's accurate, accepting perception helps clients develop healthier relationships with both external validation and internal self-recognition. Through this experience, they become less dependent on. The liberating aspect of Freud's insight is that recognizing our hunger for recognition creates the possibility of transforming it. When we understand that much of what we call love is actually the pursuit of validation, we can begin distinguishing between genuine connection and the narcissistic search for perfect mirroring. This distinction doesn't devalue love but purifies it. Mature love emerges when we move beyond using partners primarily as mirrors. It develops as we become capable of seeing the other as truly other, not just as a reflection of ourselves or a source of validation, but as a separate consciousness with their own distinct experience. This transition from narcissistic to mature love represents one of adulthood's central psychological achievements. This maturation follows a predictable developmental sequence. It begins with the narcissistic phase where we love others primarily for how they make us feel about ourselves. It evolves through what psychologists call mutual narcissism, where partners validate each other in complementary ways. Eventually, it can develop into genuine otherness recognition, where we value the partner's subjectivity independent of its effect on us. Cultural representations of romance often reinforce our fixation on recognition rather than challenging it. Popular media presents love as the discovery of someone who finally sees our unique specialness, validating our self-conception. These narratives rarely engage with the more mature challenge of seeing beyond our own need for validation to recognize the genuine otherness of our partners. The most profound relationships develop when two people simultaneously recognize each other accurately and receive recognition themselves. This mutual recognition creates a psychological space where both partners feel authentically seen without losing their separate identities. Unlike the narcissistic reflection of early attraction, this mature mirroring acknowledges both commonality and difference. Physical intimacy plays a complex role in this dynamic. Sex offers a powerful form of bodily recognition, the experience of being desired in one's physical embodiment. This explains why sexual rejection feels so personally devastating. It's experienced not just as the denial of pleasure, but as non-recognition of one's physical self. Conversely, feeling genuinely desired creates a validating reflection of one's embodied identity. Digital communication has created new complexities in our pursuit of recognition. Text messages, with their read receipts and typing indicators, create hyper-awareness of when we're being acknowledged or ignored. Dating apps reduce complex identities to images and brief descriptions, intensifying both the hunger for recognition and the pain of its absence. These technologies amplify the dynamics Freud identified rather than transforming them. Cultural differences significantly influence how recognition operates in relationships. Individualistic societies tend to emphasize recognition of personal uniqueness, while collectivist cultures often prioritize recognition of one's proper fulfillment of social roles. These cultural patterns shape both what forms of recognition we seek and how explicitly we acknowledge this need. Even spiritual traditions acknowledge this dynamic, though in different language. Many religious and philosophical systems warn against the ego's constant hunger for validation, recommending practices that develop independence from others' perceptions. These traditions recognize that while the need for recognition is natural, becoming fixated on external validation creates suffering. The practical question becomes how to transform our relationship with recognition. The first step is simply awareness, recognizing how much of our romantic behavior stems from seeking validation rather than connection. This awareness doesn't eliminate the need for recognition, but allows us to engage with it more consciously, rather than being unconsciously driven by it. The next step involves developing internal sources of validation to complement external recognition. When we cultivate the capacity to accurately see and value ourselves, we become less dependent on partners to provide our sense of worth. This doesn't eliminate the pleasure of being recognized by others, but reduces the desperate quality of seeking it. Communication about recognition needs can transform relationships. When partners understand that beneath conflicts about practical matters often lie deeper needs for validation, they can address these needs directly. Simply acknowledging, "I think you're seeking recognition for your effort here, and I want you to know I do see it," can diffuse tensions that might otherwise escalate. Physical practices like mindfulness meditation help develop independence from the constant hunger for recognition. These practices train attention to observe both the desire for validation and the possibility of letting it go, creating psychological space between stimulus and response. This space allows choice rather than automatic reaction to recognition or its absence. Ultimately, the most mature approach involves both acknowledging our need for recognition and transcending it. We can validate this natural human hunger without being controlled by it. We can seek relationships that provide authentic recognition while developing the internal resources to maintain self-worth when external validation isn't available. This balance represents psychological freedom, neither denying our social nature and need for recognition, nor being enslaved by it. Freud's insight becomes not a cynical reduction of love to narcissism, but an invitation to greater authenticity. By understanding the role recognition plays in what we call love, we create the possibility of relationships that include recognition without being limited to it. The mirror theory of desire doesn't claim that genuine connection is impossible, only that it requires moving beyond the narcissistic phase where partners function primarily as sources of validation. When we recognize our hunger for recognition without judgment, we can relate to it consciously rather than being unconsciously driven by it. This consciousness creates the possibility of loving others not just for how they see us, but for who they truly are. This shift doesn't eliminate the pleasure of being recognized. Being accurately seen and valued remains one of life's most profound joys. The difference lies in whether this recognition functions as the prerequisite for love or as one of its many dimensions. When recognition becomes a component of love rather than its foundation, relationships develop greater depth and resilience. The ultimate liberation comes with recognizing that while perfect mirroring will always remain elusive, this very elusiveness creates the space where genuine connection becomes possible. It is precisely because others can never perfectly reflect us that they remain authentically other, capable of surprising, challenging, and genuinely loving us beyond the boundaries of our self-conception. In the gap between our hunger for perfect recognition and its inevitable incompleteness, love finds its most authentic expression.